Shakespeare once said all the world's a stage, but he didn't tell us how to get there. This is Steps to the Stage, a 7th Street Theater podcast. I'm your host, Colin P, and let's get the show going.
Thank you, places!
Folks at home, do you have a business, small or otherwise, that isn't pulling in traffic the way you want it to? Well, it might be because they don't have something to remember you by. And that's why today we are sponsored by Graphic Details Inc., signs and displays. They will print out your banners, they'll cut vinyl, they'll do window graphics for the company cars. We're talking business cards, banner stands, LCD displays, tabletop displays, logos, all in full living color. Again, that is Graphic Details Inc. here in Chino, California. Thank you so much. Hello, and welcome to the next installment of our Technical Design mini-series. As always, this is Steps to the Stage, a 7th Street Theater podcast, taking you through the ins and outs of production design with the community theater professionals you know and love. Lighting and sound are the words of the day today, which means a couple of familiar faces have stopped by for a chat. Ladies and gentlemen and anything in between, you know him, you love him, we wouldn't be here without him. Let me introduce you again to Mr. Kirk Lane, who is here to talk to us about audio and sound mixing. And sitting right next to him...
Those are my fans.
All the cheering fans everywhere. Sitting right next to him, you know him as well. He's my friend and yours. It's Mr. Robby Meredith here to talk about the lights.
What's up?
Kirk and Robby, welcome back.
It's great to be back.
How have you all been? It's been a while.
It's been a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, I don't think we've seen each other for at least a minute and a half since
we finished crazy.
The last
since the door shut and the camera and the mic started rolling.
It's felt like an eternity.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
It's been good though.
I've missed you every nanosecond.
We're having fun right now.
Yeah.
Robby has the easiest lighting gig he's ever had in his however many years theater. And I've had the most challenging audio situation I've ever had.
I don't know, the sun's
really
pretty tricky.
Yeah, two ends of the spectrum here.
That's it. Robby's controlling the sun. That's how it is.
Yeah. He's finally unlocked his god powers, and now he is a threat to all.
Nice.
That is sacred.
Welcome and thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure to have you both here. Now, lighting and sound can be a bit more integral to a show than many people realize. You two have been doing this type of stuff for a long time. How much training is needed to learn the things that you know now? Like, what is that like experience?
You want to go first?
I guess I can. Well, I feel like there's a lot of classes that you have to go through. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of what comes along with tech is physical real-world experience. So the more that you interact with the boards and the lights, the more you learn about it. So doing shows and working with people who know what they're doing gets you that far. And I think just physically doing it is what helps you gain experience and get to a place of being able to do it yourself.
Yeah, I would completely agree and concur. I'm fortunate in that this was actually my industry that I professionally did for a long, long time. So I had two things. I started off in college in a band, so I wasn't afraid to plug things in and do all that. But I had a buddy of mine that his dad owned a production company, and so they're looking for help in the evenings and on the weekends. And you're in college and you need the extra money, and I'm already in a band, and so I'm already kind of familiar with it. So I was able to learn by doing, because this was many, many moons ago, probably before your guys' existence. But we had manuals, but really you just learn by doing. The great thing now is there are so many resources because you can combine like hands-on experience with everything that's available via not just YouTube, but like each individual manufacturer has like their whole site set up, and they have design systems for lighting. We have audio, we can break out where we want to put mics, we can break out where we want to put the speakers, because that's really, I think, the real world thing, especially that Robby's talking about, is you can know how to use a light inside and out, but if you don't focus it properly or program it properly, it's useless. I can turn a mic up as high as I want, but if it's not the right mic for the situation, or it's not placed properly, or speaker's not placed properly, then, so that's it.
Yeah. You
got to know your gear. You got to know your space. And, that's it I think from the technical standpoint. But, I'm going to say it in most things, but especially in the technical side, you need hands-on. You have to plug it in. You have to, you have to try things, do your best to break it without breaking it. But sometimes you break it.
Smokes, you're doing it wrong.
It's
Uh-huh.
it. That's
Mhm,
it.
mhm.
That's
That's
very
very
true.
interesting that from both of your perspectives, you kind of need to have that hands-on tactical experience more than just taking a class or reading the handbook. This is a podcast about sort of quote-unquote humble beginnings and starting from and building something a lot bigger and a lot higher. And so I think a good question that we should really ask to all of the people you have on the show is, what were your first experiences in this in this field? What were your first gigs or jobs, so to speak, and how did that, like, what was that experience like?
I'm going to take this one first because
Mhm.
oddly enough, the very first gig where I was the operator on
Mhm.
was at a theater up in Claremont.
Oh,
And this was, I think, in the early 90s. And I was the A1, the audio guy
Mhm.
for the run of the show. So they, I don't remember exactly. I want to say it went 3 weeks.
Mhm.
And it was, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, kind of like a normal run
Yeah.
you would expect from a community theater.
Uh-huh.
And for me, the best thing about it was, and this is, I think, true to theater in general, whether you're a director, whether you're an actor or whatever, but you got to get in the mindset that you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, and you have to bring that passion to it. And just like an actor or a performer or a musician or whatever, they got to dig deep and find. Same thing with the tech. Like, you have to find the inspiration in what's going on, and then you have to learn from each situation and how you would improve it. Perfect example is the show we're doing right now, right? We're doing it outside.
Yes.
And, so it brings on a bunch of unique challenges. But I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we've done 3 nights of like live rehearsals. And all 3 nights I've had a completely different configuration of how I set everything up, because each night I went, this is where we can improve. So the first night I brought in some center fills because the 2 main speakers weren't working enough. We were really not placing our mics properly. We needed to change out a few mics. And then the third night, it was all about, okay, we got it all to work. Well, now we need to make the space, the environment better for the actors and for the crew, because there's a lot of movement and on and off with this particular show that we're doing.
Quick context for this particular show. For those that aren't in our little community here, we are doing a version of The Outsiders that is done literally outside in our parking lot next door, due to certain COVID restrictions and space and all that. And it's, and so there's a lot of different challenges and things.
So my first gig was doing, really was doing a show, and there was wireless mics, there was condenser mics, there was, some hardwired mics that were utilized. So I had to mix the various different types, and it was in a nice theater, and it had a nice sound system. So thank goodness, right? Because I wasn't at that level. I just started, but I knew how to, manipulate the volumes and a little bit on the EQ and stuff like that. But just that, and then I did corporate AV, and I've done live sound, and I've done all of those things. And then because the kids got involved, I got involved. And the first couple shows I went here, I got to be honest, like, it was almost impossible to sit in the audience because the sound was that bad.
Interesting.
Now that's no offense to the theater or anyone who was doing it. Nobody really had the expertise. Nobody knew how to set up the system. They just set it up so that it worked. But they didn't balance it out. They didn't EQ it. They weren't really thinking about what mics to use, when to use them, how to communicate with the directors to understand what their vision is, how to incorporate other sounds and everything else. So that opportunity really helped me out as well, because then I could take my many years of experience professionally into this unique situation. I mean, we're in a concrete brick building that is not acoustically ideal for the situation. It's smaller. Now, the nice thing is we do have the chairs and a little bit of elevation and some carpet. And oddly enough, that actually really helps to absorb the sound. And then when you have a full house, that actually helps a lot, because it absorbs a lot of that sound that creates feedback and some of those other things. So, for me, I had it professionally, and then I had it personally, and then getting involved. So
nice.
I'll say my first experience like fully running something was here at Chino. I had done a lighting class. That was a basics. It was how to hang lights, how to run lights. So we knew how to run the board. And Paul Larson was like, "Hey, you're really good at this," and kept calling my mom, but I kept being too busy to run stuff. So we came around to Shrek, and my mom was like, I will not be saying no to this, or they're gonna stop calling. So she said yes no matter what was happening at the time. I started doing Shrek, and one day Paul was like, hey, you want to come down theater? We're on it's Friday. You can come down, help us set lights. Jacob Ramirez was there, and he came in, and I got to know people. So I ran the show for that. Got a really, really nice look at how to run stuff and how a good cue stack is set up and how to fully put that into play and tell a story through that. Later on, during Hairspray, Jacob Ramirez had been the light designer, and I was taken in as the student light designer,
protege,
because he had known me from that other experience. So from there, I had started to design things further and further. I think my first quote-unquote design job was Drowsy Chaperone, because the light designer had dropped 3 days before. So Kevin Gassio goes, hey, you want to design the show for us? And I was like, okay, we're going to design the show.
Yeah.
So from there, I just started designing shows and running them and kind of forming that how to create a story through everything.
Yeah, to sort of like making it up as you go, kind of like
Kirk figuring out how you go that. And then the more experience from different designers within the theater, you learn about all the things where you're like, oh, I'm going to do this a different way because all these things. And you learn like, don't be afraid of color and all these you keep building on, and you learn from more people and the more people you end up working with.
So a large part of this job is picking up and like setting types of cues, whether it's like lighting cues or sound cues. So what visual or audio cues do you look for during a performance, during a play, to know like when to, for instance, when to change the color of the lights, when to change the volume or the setting of the audio? And like what do you look for, and how does that influence what you give out on the stage?
I think from a lighting standpoint, it's very there are multitudes of things that you could, depending on if it's a play or a musical, because a lot of the times with musical numbers within a musical, you want to go off of beats, and at the end of the song it crashes and there's a big thing, so you're gonna pop the lights a little bit. And with different changes in music, you can change colors and bring up lights and bring them down. You can also play via the actor's own their emotions and the way in which they portray the story and kind of move with that. I remember doing Next to Normal, and it was very based on the way in which Gabe had sectioned himself in the show, and the colors of the LEDs changed throughout depending on where he was emotionally within the story. So I think that it depends on the show and depends on what you're doing to come back and forth, and depends on the kind of designer you are. And then what your director wants, because a lot of them have visions of what they see.
Yeah, no, one thing too is you really need to get in with the director early and understand what they want, because each director has their own specific level of technical understanding as well. That was one of the things that I discovered right away, is because we had such a great lighting system and resources with Robby and others that were doing it, they really knew what the capabilities were, and they'd seen so many great lighting designs and whatnot. But from an audio perspective, you just kind of think of it as, oh, it's just filling space, but you forget how much, I think I talked about it earlier on when we were talking about on our first episode. That there was, I think it was Picnic was the performance, or the show, and like they had trees going, and you could hear the bugs and the birds, and along with the lighting, and along with they do such a great job with set building as well. Like it's amazing the resources they have,
which
here.
we talked about earlier today.
It's just I tell this to anybody that will listen. Like, the great thing about this theater is you go through the front door, you sit down, the lights go out, and the performance stops, and you're on the stage. You're part of it. And it's everything.
It's very intimate, in like
sound
a really good
is
way.
such a huge part of that, right? So one of the things that we did when we first got on board was, okay, we need to think about our speaker placement. We need to think about how we're EQing everything, how we're distributing everything. There was already a few condenser mics that were hanging up above the stage, but we added 2 more. We kind of repositioned our monitors. The other thing we did is we added speakers in the back of house. And so, especially like when you think of, if you guys had the chance to see the Christmas Carol a couple of years ago, they used projections on the side of, on the drapes essentially, or in between the drapes. And so you had these characters that were in the audience. Well, if the sound is only coming from the front, it takes away some of the realism, right? Yeah. And so because we added those speakers in the back, we already have some speakers on the side. We have some, now it's a full sound. It's a whole. The other thing that's nice is you don't have to push your levels too hard. You distribute it just like we did outside. Yeah. Right? The first night, we just had the 2 main speakers and it was feeding back a lot because we were pushing them. We added the center fills and all of a sudden we were fighting through the wind a little bit better. We didn't have to push the mics a little bit better. And then one of the things that I did as well, and kind of talks about the one of the questions you had earlier, was each scene, I was really trying to understand who's speaking. So let's ride those mics a little bit more and take all the other ones out, because all the other ones that are open are bringing this wind sound in, and the wind sound becomes distracting to the audience, right? Yeah. So we really need to do everything we can to get that up there. So understanding the director's vision, but also educating them in what's possible. And then the next thing that I think we need to do a better job is the technical people need to definitely sit through a couple of the rehearsals. Absolutely, yes. And understand when things need to be, especially from an audio point of view. I mean, obviously, lighting, it's a scene to scene, but I think we need to do a better job of not only seeing rehearsals, but maybe even seeing some of the, like if it's a musical, just going in and sitting in on some of the rehearsals and seeing who can belt and who can't. And then we can even go to the director and say, hey, this person isn't getting that volume like we need. So maybe we want to reposition them closer to a microphone. So it's those things.
Yeah. Well, and I think going to the point of working with the director, I think there's also a mixture of all the techs need to work together. So if you are lighting, using the projections and knowing what the projection designer is going to do, right, as well as the projection designer knowing what the light designer is going to do, as well as the sound, so they can all kind of mix together and create one whole piece instead of being separate things. So having that whole combined idea of director as well as the designers being
create the entire whole same page. Yeah, when is there a projection that has an audio cue to it? And I think we're learning, especially over the last 2 years, that we've really put the emphasis on all that. We've upgraded some of the gear. I think more and more people are kind of learning what the possibilities are, and then they're challenging us and having us push beyond what we're normally used to, which is great. I want that every time. If I have to put up the same mics and run the same sound, I'm just phasing out, because I've been doing this for a long time and I want to find the excitement in it. But just like an actor does, and I said it, the technicians also have to dig deep. They have to stay focused. They have to stay off their phones. And another thing we did too about a year ago is we bought a ClearComm system, which we hadn't really had before. We'd had some walkie-talkies, but they were, they weren't doing the job as well as they could. So we bought a better system. And it's just so nice. Like, we can talk to, if there's a stage manager, whether they're backstage or up and actually calling the show, you can talk to them. And then you can also, without having to scream across the booth, like, okay, lighting cue, whatever is coming up. That's the cue that the audio's got to go. So we're also improving all the stuff that the audience doesn't see. We ran all new stuff for backstage. So all of that stuff, I think we added an audio monitor backstage that wasn't really there before. So and EQ'd it out. So it works out good.
Yeah.
Picture this for me. Warm food, right? People chitting and chatting all around you like it's a big family. Take a whiff in. Breathe it in deep. What do you smell? What is that? What is it? Tomato? Ooh, a little bit of garlic? Yeah. Perhaps a bit of that mozzarella cheese? Oh, you know it. Open your eyes. Where were you? That's right. Canateros, dine under the vine with a hand-tossed pizza made the old-fashioned way. You know what I mean? None of that deep-fried gunk like at those national chains. No, 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 no. If you want good quality, family-made Italian food, go to Canateros. Trust me.
Earlier you mentioned that figuring out which microphone should go where and like the audio liftings and things can start as early as like some of the first rehearsals.
Absolutely.
So how long would it usually take to design the lights and design the sounds for around a show?
Ooh, yeah, it's show to show.
Is it really?
It's you know, because a lot of it's going to depend on, you know, at least from an audio perspective, and I think from a lighting perspective too. Is there 10 people in the cast, or is there 40 people in the cast? How many people are out on stage at any given time? That's obviously going to severely impact the lighting. Well, it is for audio as well, right? Because I need to know if there's 40 people on stage, are they singing? Are they dancing? What's going on? So, I mean, for us from an audio perspective, like those 6 mics that we've set up top, they're there. They only move when we need to move, like maybe if we're putting a mic behind like a side scrim, or if there's something else, you know, that. And then we bring those PZM microphones, which are like tabletop microphones we're using outside as well. They just have a good high sensitivity. I think when we did Lion King, I actually mounted them on the inside on the top of the stage, right? And that helped out a lot. We did Cindy East was the director. It was like Brighton Beach. Yes. There was a great set, and there was tables that we could put the microphones on, and it helped out so much. And then, you know, going back to Lion King and Frozen Junior, they decided to go with actual wireless mics there.
Yes.
Right. And we've used wireless mics on the CCCT shows before, but what we discovered is 2 things. The antennas were not in the best place that they could have been, so we reran them to a better place. But also they were programmed, because we had 12 mics, I think it is, and they were all programmed on separate groups. So we put them all on the same group, different channels. And I mean, honestly, I don't know if we had any cutout at all.
Really?
I think the only problem we had is like when a battery went low or something, but we're pretty good about changing batteries before. But that was like great, because for me, I hated there was some productions that I went to before we fixed stuff up, and they were using the mics, and you'd hear this or you'd hear something completely drop out. So again, knowing your technology. And so I have to program. So to answer your question, you can't answer the question. It really depends on what's needed, what type of show. Is it a musical versus, you know, a play? Is it a drama? Is it a comedy? How much of the other audio? So from the audio perspective.
Yeah. And I think with lights, it's pretty much the same thing. Whereas from the get-go, you can start designing where you have CAD models and you start, hey, what do you want here? Do you want specials during this song? And breaking that down. But even you can see a design of the set and put your lights all around. But once you physically get in that space, it's all going to change. So you have to wait until a weekend before where you can start physically hanging stuff on that to see everything, lay it out. So typically it'll take somewhere between the last week, whereas you're fully designing, but design starts from day one. And like we're still a month out from Moana, and we're going to start having full meetings where we're talking about just lights. Like we've talked about them before, but now it's focused on just that.
Of just like, let's get down.
Yeah, let's get down and figure out what you want and what specials you want, instead of just throwing random ideas around. Let's solidify everything from there.
Yeah, so speaking about going into the meetings and things with the producers and the directors and things, most of the time during the audio and the lighting process, you guys are cooped up in the booth for the majority of the time. How often do you get to have an interaction with the actors and with the performers and see, like in like a more face-to-face in-person scenario, and see like their thoughts or your thoughts on their stuff?
I mean, obviously I work with the director to understand how much leeway I have to interact with them. Some directors want to give them that note or that interaction, and I'm cool with that. Or sometimes they say, nope, you're the expert, you go for it. I want as much as I possibly can, because I want to tell them to project no matter what. Whether you have a microphone on or not, you still need to project. Always, 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 always. Because if I have someone that's projecting, I have room to work with, right? I can control that. But if I have someone that's talking like this and I have to start turning it up, the more that I open up the volume or open up the gain, that gives you the opportunity for feedback.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to them and I want them to feel comfortable with the sound. The other thing too, like you guys have all performed, you've sang before. Yeah. When you're in something and you have bad AV and you can't hear yourself singing, it's horrible. Yeah. But nobody can see this, but both of them just rolled their eyes and shook their head right now because they've been there and they know how bad it is. But then when you have a full sound system and you can hear yourself, all of a sudden you have this confidence like no tomorrow, and you're not worrying about, you're not worrying about any of the tech. You're out there doing your thing. So I'm asking, hey, can you guys hear yourselves? Can you hear the music? I need you to turn this way and like what's been great with Mastana and Marley is they've been giving great notes, redoing blocking, things of that nature to work around what we've set up. And so to me, it's so important to get as much interaction and FaceTime with them as possible. So
I'll say it's completely different for lights. I think it's we're going to sit back here and light you guys. A lot of the time we have, like, if I'm working with somebody else to hang lights, I'll have them walk around the set so we can see that everything's lit. And if somebody's particularly tall, we'll have them walk around and make sure that they're lit because it'll be different. The only true interaction that we have with the cast is recently we've been getting into the moving heads and moving lights and specifically using those instead of spotlights.
Oh, like sort of like track.
Yeah, so you track the people, and a lot of the times that will be in a specific place and it's not going to move no matter what. Whereas a spotlight, they can pick where you are. If you're slightly off center that night, it's okay. Yeah, so like in Frozen, we had Ciara stand in the center for Let It Go, and she was going to be spotted that entire time by just that moving light, and it was never going to move. So we had to show her the exact path in which that light was moving, and so they could fully work that out and make sure that she had that down. So it was going to be perfect because there was no room for error. Which, I mean, sometimes actors are really good with getting in their light and doing that, and sometimes you need to keep, hey, let's scoot over a little bit and just having that interaction. And so with hanging lights, there's a lot of like, hey, let's push you over to the side. Let's make sure you're in your light. If you can see the light, it's probably on you. If you can't see it, you're most likely in the dark. So let's make sure that is all there. Yeah.
It's the story of my life.
Yeah. So just, I mean, sometimes you'll be waving people down for like 5 minutes and they won't see you. But, sometimes you get that person who's looking in the booth and they move over or get everyone to move over.
Conscious of.
Yeah. But physical face-to-face interactions with actors don't really happen. It's more the little things that we need to tweak and finesse. Yeah. And a lot of the times as lighting designers, you move your lights for the actors. So if, hey, I only set things to stage left and they're slightly stage right, you want to add a light to make sure you hit everyone instead of fully finessing their blocking and moving them into the corner.
Yeah. So it's a lot of, instead of just the straight up face-to-face interaction, it's more of the back and the forth between sort of what they are giving you and what you were giving them.
Yeah, it's a give and take of stuff.
And that's sort of the whole process, I guess, of designing the lights and the sound from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking for a while now. Thank you both for giving me such beautiful answers to these questions. It's actually been really informative for me, who's done a little bit of tech stuff but hasn't really gotten really deep into it. This has been really cool experience to actually sit down and talk with you two about what goes into it, what goes out of it, and what you put back into it. So yeah,
it's our pleasure.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And scene.
In today's day and age, it's more important than ever to remain informed and present in your community, which is why today we would like to highlight the Chino Champion local newspaper. Make sure you keep up with all of Chino's great local events like festivals, meetups, and live performances, virtual or otherwise. The Chino Champion. Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe to Steps to the Stage on your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff. And scene.